Alright everyone, we start off today talking about the Respect of Marriage Act. Of course, it just went to Biden's desk and got signed the other day. We'll be talking about the theatrical side behind it, as well as the more pragmatic side. First, I'm probably not going to stream today. Yesterday, I ate escargot, and for some reason, it really didn't agree with me, and I had a really bad night. So, I was curled up over the toilet at several points. And it was not very fun. You know when you get food poisoning and it feels almost like you've got like flu or something, so you got the chills, you're vomiting, you've got indigestion, it's like the least pleasant thing possible. It's like having norovirus for 6 hours or so, and so I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I'm not going to be able to focus on a fucking live stream. I'm just going to do the one-offs, finish up the last literary work, by the way, for the year, and then I'm going to call it a day. And I'm not eating snails again. Even though they were delicious and they definitely weren't past date, I don't know exactly why, because I've eaten it before and I didn't have a problem. Anyway, now that we got that out of the way, I am caffeinated, but I figured that coffee might be a little too acidic for my stomach right now, so I'm dipping into my remnant energy drink stash, at least just for the day. Bubbliness helps. Link in the description. This is Nancy Pelosi talking about this. The Respect for Marriage Act comes basically in 3 components. 2 of them are fine. They might not be necessary, but they're fine, and that's where you're getting the theatrical end of the analysis of the importance of this landmark, this great milestone for equality. The first part is it enshrines the legality of gay marriage. So it says now we're at the federal level at least, which is, again, technically superseded by the 10th if there were ever a SCOTUS case involving marriage legality, so it would be a fruitless endeavor, or potentially it would be. It enshrines gay marriage as federally legal, but it already is. Nobody sane really has a problem with it at this point. The Evangelo-Con days of like 10 years ago have ended, and the GOP has gone further and further from them. And as an early proponent of gay rights, and someone who has no problem with gay marriage, I don't really care about that element of this. It's just that it's not necessary. It doesn't address any actual problem. The handful of people within the further right that still want to restore traditional marriage, that's a dying minority even within the GOP. This causes some people on the right to be very rankled. The GOP has given ground to the leftoids, as though the concept of state marriage being something that's non-discriminatory has anything to do with their church or their religion. The second component is transracial marriage. That's even less of an issue. I haven't seen anybody within any element of mainline politics addressing that and saying, you know, maybe we need to revisit that whole black dude marrying white woman thing. I don't see any particular cultural issue there. It doesn't seem to exist. So I mean it's a victory in the sense that you're saying, okay, at the federal level we're officially upholding the idea that people from different racial or ethnic backgrounds can get married to each other. That's fine. But what actual problem does it address? This is all theatrics. This is the theatric side. You take problems that don't really exist. You make a wide, sweeping, grandiose pitch to the people on an issue you've already won on. You pass the legislation, which again, at the federal level, pending any SCOTUS case, if there were a challenge in the future, which I suspect that there won't be, your federal law wouldn't mean anything. A state could supersede that under the auspices of the 10th Amendment, potentially depending on what SCOTUS does, if there were a challenge to the existence of gay marriage that carried. But SCOTUS would have to be crazy enough to take up the case first. This is both a good and bad thing with regards to court decisions. It gives them wide latitude to say, look, the public has already made up its mind on this. You've got, what is it, 75% support at this point for the legality of gay marriage. It is overwhelming. So even if there is a constitutional argument potentially that could be made, a la tradition, a la religious liberty or something like that, we're just not going to take the case. We're just going to ignore it completely. And it'll let it die at the federal court level, where inevitably it gets upheld. Almost certainly. 99% chance. For transracial marriage, the proportion would be even higher. So the theatrical side of it is that the Democrats are patting themselves on the back in the lame duck period for ramming through something that really doesn't have any particular meaning on those first 2 ends. The third component is non-discriminatory in nature. The problem is that some of the language couched in there could be potentially construed as violating religious liberty. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean that the Democrats are going to march, in their Klan robes, probably, because they are the party of slavery and segregation, into your church and command you to conduct the gay marriage ceremony. That is not going to happen. That would run afoul of so many elements of constitutional law, state and federal legislation, that there's no possibility that any reasonable person in the judiciary would uphold it. That's not going to happen. I would point out, by the way, and I did years ago when gay marriage was still a cultural debate, we're talking back during the Obama era, so quite some time ago, that there were churches that did want to conduct gay marriages, had no problem with it, and technically were being discriminated against and being prevented from doing so. Again, on a religious basis. The Episcopal Church had no problem with it. The Unitarians had no problem with it. Certain other groups, mostly Christian, you'll notice, which is hilarious how they were more progressive than their other religious contemporaries, yet they got disproportionate flack for also standing in the way of it. And you always heard those evil Christians. You never heard the evil Baptist Convention or the evil Pentecostals that refused to go along with this Jesus-sanctioned progress towards more love and tolerance and togetherness. The problem really boils more down to attempting to compel business to be done. But we've got a pending SCOTUS case literally right now that might upend that particular component of the Respect for Marriage Act anyway. It's going to be very, very interesting, depending on SCOTUS' decision. I mean, they could side with the gay group that wanted the Christian website designer to make the gay website. They may not. We have no way of knowing where they're going to rule. I have speculation that they probably rule with the web designer. In which case, the only component of the Respect for Marriage Act that people are identifying as problematic immediately gets carved out. It's unactionable. So what are you left with? And the Democrats know this, by the way. This is part of the theatrics. They're left with enshrining something that's already been enshrined and has largely moved past being a cultural issue, and enshrining something else at the federal level that long ago moved beyond being a cultural issue. So where's the victory? Where's the import of this particular act? They could be doing other things right now, things that are technically more meaningful, mainly on the economy, crime, and the border, but they choose to do this instead. Well, you can support gay rights and, the concept that people, consenting adults, should be able to marry however they wish without giving this particular import. The cultural battle over gay marriage died long ago. It's a dead issue. The GOP has halfway pulled back off even talking about it. The handful of evangelocons that were there crying and saying, well, now the devil is going to come and rule America, we're all going to be cursed to hellfire or something, that is a whining minority. It's like saying the AOC is the face of the Democratic Party. Now, the face of the Democratic Party are FTX-adjacent neoliberals, Brian Griffin liberals that just grift off of corporations. Somehow they tend to be worse than the progressives at many times. But the progressives, so-called, the socialist wing, are still a minority. The fact is that Joe Biden can talk a big game about wanting to get rid of the evil assault weapons, but it ain't going to happen. Again, it's throwaway theatrics. They do this all the time, and I would point out in closing, the Democratic Party was not really on board with gay marriage until fairly recently in the political calendar. Libertarians were for it in the 1970s. The Democrats somehow get credit for it, even though Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and all their other yesteryear leaders, they were always against it. Obama was a civil union Dem. Hillary was even more vociferous against it than that. She pissed off student groups at the time during her Senate run back in the 2000s. Biden, he never really pushed the issue. Now he pretends to be like the gay president. He's like, well, I always supported pride. But my daddy, one time I saw two men kissing. This is back in the 50s, quite literally, he's claiming this. And I looked at my dad and asked him what was going on. He said, well, they're in love. That never happened, Joe. Just to be clear, you weren't a progressive back in the 1950s, or you very quickly forgot about that and went towards being a tough-on-crime neoliberal. You didn't say anything about the goddamn issue for decades and decades. All of a sudden you want credit for having been woke back at the dawn of the atomic era? Give me a fucking break. That's about all. Peace out.